Guest today is Leslie Omana-Biggert, the CEO and co-founder of Fabulingua. How are you, Leslie? And it's been a long time since we talked, and we've had some great conversations with Mark. But our topic today, we're going to really go into comprehensible input as a movement, which is intriguing because we talked about this when we had our first ever interview together. And you're saying it's becoming more and more of a movement, especially with your technology.
Yeah, it started off very quietly with research that was done by Stephen Krashen in the academic circles. And then this information, these insights into how we learn and acquire a second language started spilling into the realm of teachers. And I have watched it over the last couple years go from this like super niche idea to really, really gaining momentum amongst the teaching community because it just proves itself out time and time again that when teachers teach through comprehensible input, they're so much more successful at helping their kids acquire a second language that it has really taken off. It's really acquired its own energy as a movement amongst teachers. Almost all teachers by now have heard of comprehensible input and they're very curious about it. And this movement has up until now been a largely kind of paper-based approach. And we are the technology solution for this movement that's got its own energy, all of its own accord. I mean, there are conferences exclusively about it. And every year they have more and more teachers. And the word spreads about how successful this is as a methodology, as an approach to teaching a second language.
And absolutely. And it's happened for years, you said, but finally now it's making really big strides. What do you think? It's just the way they were seeing the other way wasn't working as well. I think that's
Yes, I think it's become really as more teachers have been implementing and learning how to implement it in class because it's a little bit of a heavy lift, right? To implement it in class. When you learn about comprehensible input, you have to then learn about, well, how do you implement that in class? And so as more teachers have been implementing it in class, they've just been having a lot of success and they've been communicating with their peers. Teachers really communicate a lot amongst each other in the teacher community on Facebook groups, etc. So they're really taking their findings and sharing it with other teachers. And then other teachers are becoming curious about, well, what is this? How can I find out more about it and start implementing parts of it and then eventually more of it in class myself.
no, I absolutely. I think about when you talk about this movement, kind of define what comprehensible input is.
Yes, comprehensible input is this idea that we acquire, and this was put forward by Stephen Krashen, the linguist and researcher, that we only acquire a second language through providing a lot of input into the human brain, so long as it's comprehensible, which means you, roughly speaking, understand the gist of it. That when you provide a lot of comprehensible input, our brains are designed to acquire that language. So your job as a teacher is to really focus on that. How do I provide a lot of input that is comprehensible? And if I provide a lot of it, the brain's going to be doing a lot of that language acquisition. And this is all to get students to acquire the language as opposed to memorize it, right? Memorize it means, yeah, sure, you can conjugate all these verbs, et cetera, and you can get an A on the test, but can you use it? Likely not, because you're sitting there scrolling through your brain trying to remember which tense of whatever. So that the movement stands of using comprehensible input to help students acquire a second language stands in contrast with the traditional way that we have historically taught second languages, which is through a real grammar-based approach, memorization of grammar rules, memorization of like through flashcards and just isolated bits of vocabulary that are not in context. And so that's a very kind of a bookish way of learning that it turns out is not effective at acquiring a language so you can actually use it. Whereas a comprehensible input approach is much more effective at getting kids to acquire and adults to acquire a language so they can actually use it in everyday interactions. And so people are just more focused on that these days. I also think it's sort of part of a movement in our culture nowadays to be a little bit more pragmatic, which is what do I want to do with this second language? Do I want to be able to use it and, make the most of it in my daily life? Or do I want to get an A on a test that actually doesn't serve to help me actually use it? And so I think people are just getting much more pragmatic about what is it that you want to get out of this. And so acquisition has become, that's another part of this movement, is a focus on language acquisition as opposed to language learning, right? And so acquisition driven instruction is part of this movement, right? It's you're instructing kids so that they, and adults, so they acquire the language, not just learn it and memorize it.
So how has Fabiolingua with its technology been able to implement this?
Yeah, so I mean, we love the comprehensible input approach to teaching a language. It's just, as I said before, it is quite a heavy lift on the teacher in terms of planning, and in terms of organizing themselves to a new approach. And we just thought, this is something that technology can really leverage. So we use stories. Our technology uses stories to provide comprehensible input through the story. So we have, it means that the kid can, through the gameplay and the story, have a lot of this input. And then the teacher can see on her dashboard exactly what kind of input they've had, how much of it is landing, and then she can go in and use that for lesson plans that are made for you, pre-made lesson plans, and just providing, and I'm really coming to this approach that comprehensible input, the approach to using comprehensible input should be not just more effective for your students, but it should actually make your life as a teacher easier. And so that's really our magic sauce, which is, when you use technology to provide comprehensible input, you are much more effective as a teacher because you're using comprehensible input, but you're also making your life as a teacher easier because you are using this technology that's got sort of pre-made classroom plans, etc. So all of your prep work gets really cut down, and your insights that you get are much more significant. So
You're
that's kind of,
you're seeing that growth.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
able
Oh
to
my
see that.
goodness, yeah. No, I mean, to me, what's really makes it really clear that it's this movement is that, you know, we launched the teacher dashboard to teachers kind of toward the end of the school year, and it's unbelievable. Already, we've had 850 teachers sign up to the dashboard to start using it with their students, and like literally, like they cannot get enough of it. And so the fact that the teachers are coming to us and signing up and just saying, "Show me more. I want to use this in class," just really proves that we're riding this wave, this movement to using comprehensible input in the classroom because teachers know it's successful.
And you also created something on your own from your own working with your children involving reading in part of Fabulingua. Is that kind of like comprehensible input, or in a way through the storytelling and the way you have it set up?
Yeah. So in actual fact, comprehensible input to date in the classrooms is given you make input comprehensible as a teacher using all of the tools available to you. You act things out, you act out a story, right? You do lots of exaggerated movements and you kind of are funny with your students. You do a lot of it is drawing. Teachers do drawing on the whiteboard of a story as they narrate it, they draw it, so they make it comprehensible that way. They occasionally use translations. They do a lot of pointing, mis orejas, mi cabello, mis ojos. And so they use this kind of combination. They use a lot of expressions, like they're called sort of TPR expressions, such as like comer. It's not American Sign Language. It's a sort of its own kind of little hybrid. So they use a lot of like acting out, comer, escuchar, mirar. And so there's a lot of exaggerated acting from the teacher, typically of a story or of a narrative. So storytelling is so powerful. We know this already for human as a method for humans to learn of a whole slew of things. Like storytelling is the oldest teaching methodology. So typically, comprehensible input uses all of these ways, this myriad of different ways to make input comprehensible. It's either acting, it's pointing, it's drawing, it's making gestures, and there's a comprehensible input readers. So there's a whole array of options for teachers to be able to use, usually in tandem with each other, to make input comprehensible. Fabulingua makes input comprehensible through a patented approach, a patented technology, which uses the simultaneous magical translation the first time that a child hears a story. So we weave in the translation into your language so that you understand that page. Typically, it's not many sentences. It's a few sentences per page. You understand that page. And once you understand it, we turn the translations off. And then the next 4 or 5 times that you hear that same story, you already know what that page is about. And that's really all comprehensible input wants you to do, is to have a gist of what's going on in that page. And then you can hear it over and over again. And each time your brain is acquiring and wiring to more of that input. And so we have a whole algorithm that takes you through gameplay. We use gameplay to create a lot of rewards for repetition, and each repetition in this a slightly different way. We do a lot of mimicry of native accents. So in actual fact, one of the things that people always tell us is Fabulingua is amazing at developing really excellent pronunciation in children. It's kind of stellar at that. So we have our own unique way of creating comprehensible input through technology, and that teachers really, really appreciate that in the classroom. And they get a ton of insights through their dashboard. Of course, the access to the dashboard is completely free to teachers. And so they love that approach as well, that this is something that they can use that provides an insane amount of value to the teacher, lots of lesson plans to go that are sort of done and ready to go for you to be able to use all of this material on the platform for free. So that's another super appealing aspect of it for teachers.
Fabulous, fabulous. Now you have two news items about Fabulingua. First of all, office hours. Explain that.
So yes, starting from the last week of July through August, we're going to be having office hours a few times a week, so that people, they're going to be a couple hours twice a week. We might make it more if we see that people want more, but we're going to start with twice a week. And you can just hop on a call and on a video conference, and we'll answer any question you have about Fabulingua and walk you through how to set up, any troubleshooting that you need to do, any specific questions about your particular context. And we'll be there until like the last person needs their questions answered. So office hours starting the last week of July all the way through August. And then we're also going to be doing a webinar series, and that's going to take a slightly different format. We're going to start our webinar series with just an understanding of what is comprehensible input, what is the effective filter, what is the silent period, a lot of these kind of fundamental principles that have come about from the research that's been done in second language acquisition. So the teachers have that as a sort of backdrop to why this is a very effective method and what the science has shown. So some sort of like academic backdrop to modern language teaching. And then we'll go through in the next few webinars after that, the actual Fabulingua product, the Fabulingua teacher dashboard. Will really teach everybody, like, it is so deep, there's so much there that we really felt we needed a webinar to show you like the range of tools that are now going to be at your disposal as a teacher.
Excellent. And go to fabulingua.com/teachers right now if you want to sign up for the teacher's dashboard, or just go to fabulingua.com, or go to the Apple Store or the Google Play to download Fabulingua, right?
That's right.
All right. Thanks again, Leslie. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. You're listening and watching